Take a lightning bolt, you evil curry son of a bitch! Fine shops with big boobed attendants. Oh, they even have different. I forgot about that too. Sometimes when they die, the bigger monsters, they don't do the. It's not the. It's the.
Released in 1990 by Strategic Simulations Incorporated, originally for the Commodore 64, DOS, IBM, Apple II, and your beloved Commodore Amiga. This was the first of the GoldBox games to be developed in-house for the Amiga by SSI themselves. Ubisoft had done the port for Pool of Radiance, and Micromagic had done the port for Curse of the Azure Bonds. This one was done by SSI themselves, and they did a fabulous job on the Amiga. It might not show instantly if you just look at screenshots. I'm telling you, like, the colors are there, and there's even features that I will definitely get into a little bit more as we go on. Make sure you note the character selection screen with its icons. That is an Amiga exclusive, but I wanted to show you right now the importance of covering a game like Champions of Krynn in the face of YouTubers today who just ignore this game. Look at this. The top 25 selling games based on actual sales. Apparently from July 31st of 1990. Number 4, the top 25 selling games of July 1990. Number 4 is AD&D Champions of Krynn. The week prior, it had been number 3, and I bet if you go back a little bit more, it probably was number 1 at some point. Number 1 on this list this week is AD&D Secret of the Silver Blades, the 4th game in the franchise. No, we're not done yet. Let's go back to the end of January of 1990 as a brand new game. Champions of Krynn breaks the top 10. Number 8, brand new Champions of Krynn. And you go up a little higher. Curse of the Azure Bonds is number 6. It had been number 3 the previous week. We go down just a little bit more. Pool of Radiance, the original, was number 11 in that list. And we go down even some more. AD&D, Dragon of Flame. That is not a GoldBox game, but that is an officially licensed SSI game. That was their side-scrolling SSI genre kind of thing. And if that wasn't good enough for you, because technically that top 25 list is an advertisement, it's not really. What they did, they got a group of, I believe, 15 software developers. I'm sure they paid this company money to count their games, but they're an accurate count of those 15 developers. Electronic Arts, all your big boys, and even some of the little boys are actually in there again. I believe I was having an argument on Twitter with somebody who said, that's not accurate, it's not an accurate statement, because the little people, they wouldn't actually pay money to be in this list. Yes, they would if they were actually selling that much, they would. And I would take it with a grain of salt if people covered the games that you saw on that list. They do not cover those games. They just cover Commander Keen, the side-scrolling stuff. They don't cover the games that actually sold on computers back in the day. That is a big problem. And if that wasn't enough for you, let's just take a look at this list. That was actually compiled by reader input. This is a reader input. The same exact type of games show up on the readers once. The readers likes. Number 40 on this list, and I'm sure if you go back a little bit more, you'd see it higher. But number 40 on the list is Curse of the Azure Bonds. And I've said it before, that just because a game sold, and just because a game was well-liked, and just because the game was well-reviewed, doesn't necessarily make it good. It certainly doesn't hurt, it doesn't. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt the possibility that it's a good game when all 3 of those things are true, which they are with this game. yet do any of the DOS people cover it. Just a handful. D-Forte, he's a good one to watch if you want to see some of these awesome games. Do any of the Amiga people cover a game like this with their primary European bent? Even the Americans have a European bend to them. Do they cover it? Absolutely not. They have no clue this game even exists on the Amiga, let alone that it was developed on the Amiga in America. That means it's NTSC. It's an NTSC game played in a NTSC mode with a 4:3 aspect ratio. Thank you. That means no PAL, no widescreen look, no 16:9, no big widescreen little window with a huge black bars on the bottom. None of that. NTSC mode. Champions of Krynn would sell about 117,000 copies. Pool of Radiance, the original, which was the best-selling of the GoldBox games, would sell over 250,000 units, which is incredible for a computer game of that era. Take in $250,000 and times that by $50. 116,000 copies. 117,000 copies. Times that by 50. That is that's $5 million. 850,000. $5,850,000. That's just for champions. You saw all of the games that were on that top 25 list. Boatloads of money were made in the computer market. Less people bought computer games, but boatloads of money were made. It's a similar thing to the Amiga's perception in America. Less people had computers, period. Anywhere in the entire world, including Europe, less people had the Amiga than had an NES or anything. This is a fact. And actually, though the percentages of computer owners and Amiga owners might have been higher in Europe, that's percentage. The overall populations of Europe, much less than in America. So actually, the people that actually had an Amiga in America probably was a little higher than in Europe. In any individual country, I'm saying, in the United Kingdom, Germany, I think, is the only one that rivals America in actual units, I believe. So, $49.95 is what this game was released for, brand new, and it sold. And it was indeed released in Europe as well, under, I believe, a U.S. Gold released it over there. SSI was the developer and publisher in America, but U.S. Gold published it overseas. So it had a presence over there as well. Let's start covering these games, everybody, and let's start covering the introduction of this one. From the manual, Champions of Krynn begins after the War of the Alliance. The evil armies have been shattered, and most of the forces of good have returned to their homelands, leaving only outposts to safeguard the recovered lands. Your goal is to assemble a party of adventurers to serve in these border outposts. To the circle of knights, I, your humble servant, send you greetings. This missive is sent without the knowledge of my commandment and violation of his orders. I take this action in full knowledge of the consequences it may bring upon me, and through the conviction that in doing so, I fulfill my oath. The commandment has been acting strange of late, as if afflicted by some dark spell. I know that information of evil pens has not been forwarded to your august body as required by our charter. Many of our most faithful followers have died suddenly and mysteriously within this last fortnight. The commandment has been too ready with replacements for them, replacements which have an unclear feel. I ask that you send a knight of pure character and high stature to investigate my conduct and this report. As further evidence, I provide in its entirety a letter found on the body of one Hal Corbin, a ranger of the highest character. In the 348th year after the Cataclysm, the evil forces of Tychicus, the Queen of Darkness, launched the treacherous war she had long prepared in secret, striking first north, east, and then south. The armies of evil dragons, fell draconians, and all manner of other evil beings quickly overran the unprepared and unsuspecting. The good dragons, historical enemies of the evil dragons, could not ally themselves with the forces of good as part of the Dark Queen's plan. Their eggs were taken as hostage, while the great beast slept. The good dragon's neutrality was the price they paid to keep their eggs from harm. While the good forces' attempts to ally against the common threat were hampered by the treachery and old feuds, the evil armies made good use of their time, quickly consolidating their hold on newly acquired lands. They struck west and even further south in the winter of 351 AC. A party of adventurers, how their discovery that the Draconians were the result of the corruption of the good dragon eggs, freed the good dragons from their pledge and brought them into the war on the side of good. How they helped Krynn to return to the temple outside of Naraka, and with his death closed the portal that gave Texas an entry into Krynn. It was at this time that many counted the war over. With their queen locked out of this world, the dragon armies lost their sense of direction. Many urged the good armies to return home and disband. Some were foolish enough to do so. But evil had retained a strong grip on much of the land. The corruption process was stopped, but the good eggs were not returned. The exploits of the companions had given evil yet a new form. Caught up in this power struggle, evil forces struck again. Katera, half-sister to Rastlin, and the hero, Karl, organized an attack. Dragons, draconians, men, and other evil creatures bypassed the High Clitter's tower and fell on Palathysis. The city would have stood against even these forces had it not been for the aid given by Lord Soth and his Death Knights. Dear God, think up some better names that can be pronounced. None could stand before them as they swept through the city streets. In the very tower where Rastlin did battle with the Dark Queen, Katera fell. It is said that Lord South took her unwilling and undead body off to a fate far worse than a clean death. Whatever the reason, the Death Knights withdrew and good overthrew the invaders. With this clear lesson before them, all realized the evil threat could return at any time. With new resolve, the Alliance stood to arms again, led by the Solomonic Knights. The good forces smashed through the remaining dragon armies. In a long and bitter campaign, the eastern lands were freed. The city of Sanction fell to a bloody siege. Evil was routed and his followers driven deep into hiding. Many of the good dragon eggs remain lost. Lord South stays secure and apparently untouchable in his fortress, although he provided no aid to the dragon armies in this last conflict. The knights, on whom so much depends, are stretched too thin. Indeed, it is all the knights can do to provide the outposts with leadership. The work of patrolling and the like falls almost entirely on ordinary folk, such as ourselves. We hear rumors of settler caravans killed or enslaved, of a strange force that opens graves and robs the dead. Commandment sends out patrols, and they report nothing. At least those who return have nothing to report. But of late, not all sent out have been coming back. I know the commandment has been urged to report all this, but he has refused to do so. The fact is that our commandment has not been himself lately. He looks the same and talks the same, but his actions, his feel, are quite different. I fear some dreadful fate awaits us all. A fate we should be able to see, but which a dark veil is hiding. Territories in this game are those that were overrun by evil armies during the War of the Lands or were occupied by the evil beings before that war. Throtl was the capital city of the Hobgoblins. Naraka was the special city of Texas, and her temple was located near it. Sanction was a pre-cataclysmic city that was the base of operations for the dragon armies. Krynn was the capital city of ogres. The mountains near Jellic hold Gutschmal. While those are now empty ruins, it is rumored that an area sacred to the true gods exists somewhere in these mountains. The lands are largely empty, save for a few settlers. The city of Sanction is the only area that has come close to its pre-war level of settlement. So that's a little bit of the backstory there. Great backstory, great story, period, in terms of this game in particular. It's, Pool of Radiance, the original, is always going to be, the most memorable of the stories to me. It's just, it always sticks with me. But this game, Champions of Krynn, and the entire Krynn series, is actually very story-driven, more so than the other GoldBox games. And that's a good and bad thing, according to your point of view. This is a much more linear game than the other GoldBox games. It's still it's still non-linear overall, but it's much more linear than the GoldBox games. Now, there are, you have your opportunities to skip areas, to go right ahead to another area. You can say yes, you can say no, and if unlike a JRPG, if you are given a choice of, do you want to come with me and help this person out, and it says yes or no at the end, you have a choice there. You can say yes, and that's what you're supposed to say. It's the best choice in terms of the story and probably in terms of experience, and probably make it even a little easier on you. But you can say no, and somebody might die because of it, or you might just have to go through a long maze or something. You have the choice, so it can be a little laughable with the JRPGs that, they give you a choice of yes or no. You say no, and it's just like, oh, okay. And then it just rephrases the question, yes or no. No. And it's like, well, come back to me when you say yes or something. It's like, really? That's not a choice then. Why did you even bother to ask me? And you'll be seeing a lot more of these moments where it goes into the widescreen view there to put in a little nice picture for you, which there were no scenes in the original Pool of Radiance that had any of those, widescreen kind of looks. They did have them in Curse of the Azure Bonds a little bit, but this game just, puts them in tons and tons of different places, which can really immerse you into this particular world. Combat, I mentioned it in my Pool of Radiance review, but this is the single best series of games in terms of role-playing combat. It just never, ever was eclipsed, at least in my point of view. I mean, Baldur's Gate would also be a wonderful combat system, but that is real time. Your MMORPGs these days, have wonderful combat systems, but you gotta play it with a bunch of other people. This is the thing about role-playing games for me. Yes, this stuff is officially licensed D&D material, but the D&D people, originally the pencil and paper people, they had friends. So, in one way, they're more nerds than the computer nerds, because, they're sitting there, with paper and pencil, and they're reading these huge books, and you got one person who's the mastermind and controlling it all, the dungeon master. In one sense, they are beyond normal nerds, but then in another sense, they have friends, and a lot of nerds don't have friends that you can, just talk to and stuff like that. And even today, with the MMORPGs, that's all. It's a human thing. And I'm just not the type of nerd that wants to be role-playing with other humans. If you're interested in those, role-playing things, if you read the TSR novels and stuff, I think my dad did. My dad had stacks of those TSR novels that he read. If you're into that stuff, and I think you just fallen completely in love with these computer games. But if you were the paper and pencil kind of role-playing person, I don't think they had too much of a fondness for these games. Maybe they got some kind of kick out of them. Some of them, it just depends. But a lot of them probably look at this and like, what the hell is this? What's important for them to realize? It's a very special, unique thing. This is why TSR got into this market, and they let SSI handle it. They wanted a part of this thing. They did feel that a lot of people out there might really get a kick out of it, and as you can see by those sales numbers, a lot of people did. Now, what you're seeing right now is me taking away all of the money from my knight character, which is me. Taking it all, and I'm giving it to my other characters, because normally in this game, the knight is a very selfless person, and he just gives most of his money away. Well, I think it starts out at just 20% he'll give. Once you enter an outpost, he gives his tithe to the outpost. But later on, as you gain levels and you become Knight of the Rose, and he'll start giving 95% of it away. And it's one of the mechanics that's a little different in this game. It's really not that much, because when you train, that most of your money in the other games goes to training, and that's free in this game for some reason. You will also be gaining levels quite a bit in this game. I cannot believe that after the first major quest, I'm already at level 4 with some of these people. My God, you just get these levels way faster than in the other games. Level 3 spells haste. Haste, you know how powerful of a spell haste is? Even Stinking Cloud, I shouldn't be having that already. You would not have this spell at this point in the game in the original Pool of Radiance, which, battle after battle, you might be getting 50 experience or something in those games. It's just, this game is a lot easier than the other, Forgotten Realms series. But it's that way on purpose, I believe. It is a much heavier story-driven game. And in order to do that, they give you more experience so you can go on to the next area a lot quicker. So it depends on your point of view, what you get out of this game. You might think this is a better game than the other games because it is easier. It might be the perfect game to start with, actually, if you've never played a GoldBox game, because it is easier. Because of the story, you might really dig the story, and you might love it because of that. Or, I like the other games, the Forgotten Realms games, a little more, because they are harder, more difficult, and because of that, they stick with you a little more. That's my personal feeling on that, but you don't have to hate this game in order to love the other games more or anything. It just depends, on your point of view. And actually, I can say from experience, actually, that this is a great game to start your love for the GoldBox games with. This was the first GoldBox game that I beat. It was in 1999. I had played Death Knights of Krynn on the Amiga itself, much earlier than that. And I played Might and Magic 2. I played a bunch of little role games, but you can't. American CRPGs, don't expect to get far with them as a kid. You're gonna be slaughtered. And I had enough fun with Death Knights of Krynn that it really stuck with me and stuck in my head. Later on, 1999, I went online and I managed to cure Champions of Krynn, the first game. Death Knights was the second. Let's go to the first one here. Played that in DOS, and it was the first game that I had managed to beat. The first GoldBox game I ever beat on my own. So excited. I went to my dad, my father, and I told him, because I remember him playing all of these GoldBox games. And I'm like, guess what? Guess what? I beat Champions of Krynn. And I quote, this is my father. Oh, yeah? Yeah? Well, that one was easy. Try Pool of Radiance. I laughed today. I was so ticked off at him at that time. But it was true. Pool of Radiance 1,000 times more difficult than Champions of Krynn. Nevertheless, Champions of Krynn was a wonderful experience for me back then. It's still a wonderful experience to have. I'll never get enough of these GoldBox games. Now, I think I'm going to show you some reviews, and some of the people definitely are getting tired of the same formula. By this point, this is the third game in the series. They're getting a little tired of that formula, but that is from a reviewer, anal, gotta find something to nitpick. That's from that perspective. But they kept buying them, and because a lot of people did get lots of charm out of them. But yeah, it's a perfect game to start with if you've never played a GoldBox game. We're Black Dragons already, only 24 hit points on them. Again, I'm playing at the default level. I think I showed that at the very beginning somewhere. This is the first game to offer you a choice. You can be a novice. There's several levels. I think the default is the 4th level of difficulty, and there's a couple more after that. Maybe I should go to a more difficult one, because I did find this one very easy myself. But if you find it hard, well, there's that difficulty level. which actually it's not purely more easy. Some things are more easy, but for the like random battles, you know, it'll be easier to kill them because they'll have less hit points. They'll probably hit you less often, but there'll be more of them. So it's like this compromise, and then you'll get less experience at the very end of the battle. So it's going to take you longer to level up. So in some ways, it's actually more difficult. In some ways, the game itself is harder, actually, than the Forgotten Realms ones, because you will be facing tons more humans, tons more people that can cast spells like Stinking Cloud that will go onto your party. Chokes and gags, you know. That is a one-hit kill now. If they hit me, I am dead. There are so many more magic users in this game, so you have to, if you want to combat that, you have to put more magic users in your party, which means you have to think differently for this game, which is a wonderful thing. I really had to manipulate my party, think hard about my selection for this game. I believe by the end of this game, every single one of my characters will have spellcasting ability to some degree. The knight doesn't start out with that, but he will by the end. And all the other ones are, multi-class for the most part, or one class, but it's a magic class.
Damn it!
You really got to have that. There he goes. He's down. He's not dead. I can bandage him up and bring him back, but it is actually harder in some senses dealing, and you got to think. You really got to think hard. The battles in this game, it's like the best analogy is that you're playing a game of chess. Really, it's altered rules. But it's a lot more fun than chess, I think. But you really got to think for some of these things, but once you understand it, once you're used to it. The overall game does feel easier once you're used to that, but in order to make it easier, you've got to be thinking like that. Time for a check at the magazines. This is info, or maybe .info, I don't know. This is before the World Wide Web, so I'm not sure what the heck they're thinking with the dot in the front there, but I'm calling them info. Issue number 33 from October of 1990, American magazine, $3.95 in America, $4.50 in Canada. How about we start off with some interesting Amiga news. Commodore has announced that the Amiga will now be available to consumers in a number of new major consumer outlets. New retailers include Montgomery Ward, Macy's of California, Video Concepts, McDuff, Highland Appliances, Sun TV, and Famous Bar. Montgomery Ward and Highland Appliances were two that were in my area. And much like when Jack put the Commodore 64 in Toys R Us, I bet this pissed off a hell of a lot of dealers in America. In the UK they did put the Amiga in Toys R Us, but you have no idea the amount of hurt that went on in America because of Jack Trammell and putting the Commodore 64 in Toys R Us. They had no interest in doing the same here. In Montgomery Ward, Highland Appliances, these are not the same as Toys R Us. These are dedicated, much more sophisticated kind of retailers in terms of electronics and things. There's also a really interesting story about Commodore losing the bid for the government and the IRS in terms of handling an account with Sears there. Originally, they had won the contract, but then they got sued by a whole bunch of other companies, unfortunately. That might have helped quite a bit. Speaking of dealers, take a look at all these dealers here. This is just the dealers that sold this magazine in Amiga storefronts. Look at that huge list. In Michigan, there's Microworld, and there is Slip Disc in there, both ones that I remember going to, and I believe that Commodore article might have mentioned, like I believe there were 1,000 dealers at least in America that sold the Amiga. And independent dealers. I mean, I'm not talking about Montgomery Ward or Macy's or something. Independent dealers. It's a lot. The review itself. Champions of Krynn. Yet another chapter in the DragonLance series of AD&D games. Champions of Krynn chronicles days after the War of the Lands and the ongoing battle to defeat Texas. For this installment, SSI has updated the game system and added a new character class. Rounding out the adventure experience are realistic sound effects and nicely animated graphics in the style of Curse of the Escher-Bonds. Previous DragonLance games have been admittedly long on story and atmosphere and somewhat short on playability, but Champions succeeds in striking a pretty good balance. JKC. Who is JKC, and why does he feel he is such renowned status that he can put his initials in there? Creatures with no intelligence are not evil, though they may still need to be battled. This is my view on trolls, by the way. Here's an example of how this game can indeed have its moments of being hard, just like all the rest of the GoldBox games. I believe this is my first death, at least on screen it is. Well, it's gonna be anyway. And that magazine, that review there, it showed Might and Magic 2 above it, and that's an instance where you can definitely see the Amiga's influence in the sales charts, that we saw earlier, too. It's not just a DOS sales chart. That sales chart definitely included the Amiga, and you can see its influence when you see a game like Might and Magic 2, which appeared in that list. Even the original Pool of Radiance appeared on one of those lists, and I believe that speaks for the Amiga's influence, because, what does 1990 have to do with those games? That's 2 years. 2 years after those games were released, and definitely computer games could survive several years. But I think it definitely speaks, because what's the major thing? What's the major change in that, 1990 there? Those games were released for the Amiga. That's the thing that you gotta think about right there. Why are they showing up in those sales charts all of a sudden again after 2 years? The Amiga. And here I am dying. Well, this is a reset moment, actually. I could have won this battle, but I decided to reset the game because my character died. You need the knight. And then the next time I played it, everybody died. That's the first and probably the only actual on-screen death that occurred in this, but there were plenty of times because of the amount of magic users that are in this game. And the next time, even when I won, there's still somebody that went down, but they didn't die. I brought them back. But there were no shortage of times that, because the sheer amount of magic users that are enemies that can cast Stinking Cloud or Hold Person on you and pretty much guarantee that you will lose the battle, that just means instant reset rather than go through with the death. It certainly has its moments of being difficult. This is probably one of the most memorable moments in this game here. It's this whole trial that you go through in order to talk to this ghost. It reminds me a lot of the movie Dragon's Heart with Sean Connery as the dragon, and I think Dennis Quaid as the main character in that one. Eventually he goes and recites the code, the old code of the knight. The knight is full of valor. His heart knows only virtue. That is true role-playing right there. Really, this whole area really sucks you into that role-playing element. And you know what else helps us role-play? Mapping, actually, hand mapping. These games, I cannot recommend it more highly. I believe in my Pool of Radiance review, I got into that definitely a little more. I think I spent like 10 minutes of that review actually telling you and showing you how to hand map these games. It is so important. Put parental controls on the walkthroughs. Ban them from your life. It is essential. The enjoyment to this game and not getting tired of its repetitiveness or something, the combat, the random battles and stuff. It is imperative that you get out the graph paper or just go online and print them for free. Get them out. Grab a pencil or pen. I use a pen. I'm that confident in my skills there. Get them out and map them square by square. Almost everything but the overworld, I believe. Most of it is 16 by 16 grids. There are a couple moments in there where it alters, but they're not that hard to get around. Now you might have noticed that the outdoor section map there wasn't completely filled out there, and this is where I have some criticism of the game there. Yes, I hand mapped most of the outside world. And there's so many. Most of the unique enemies in this game are actually in the outside areas, and it's fully possible in this game just to go from town to town with a high likelihood of not actually running into random encounters that much. And most of the unique enemies, that's where they're at. Definitely this game does not have much variety in terms of the enemies. You are just facing the Draconians, the Boss, the whatevers. They are just everywhere in this game. There's too many of the same dragon type. Technically, they're reptiles in this game. But, and when you're not facing them, you're facing dragons. And dragons, they're quite a foe, usually. A lot of those littler dragons in this game aren't that big a deal to deal with. But, the Bozak, the Boz, you're constantly fighting these. And that's realistic for the DragonLance realm. It's called DragonLance for a reason. That's a big part of the deal. But the later games, you wouldn't be facing this many of these exact types of creatures versus the Forgotten Realms area where there's just this tremendous wealth. But in this game where there is wealth is actually on the outside world. But there is a point in this game that due to its more linear nature, you go to this one area, not expecting it, but you go to this one area and then suddenly you are just whisked towards the end game. You end up going, flying towards the last city, which is Krynn. And if you go to Krynn on the outside map, if I had mapped it all earlier, you're not allowed into Krynn at all. So, it is definitely more linear. There are stops in certain areas where you can't just go from the beginning to the end of the game. You must go through some areas beforehand. There's definitely lots of room in between there to do things and not do things, to say yes and to say no. So it's not completely linear, but it's definitely more linear. But once you hit that one point, it's end game, and there was things I wanted to do, and there are some cities that I didn't completely map because I finished accidentally just mapping it naturally. I came to the point where something happens, a story element happens, and then you're kicked out of the city. So it's not like Pool of Radiance where I mapped everything. Now Maya here is a dragon in disguise. She's got that polymorphine kind of special skill with her. She's a dragon that can turn into a human. She is in love with Sir Karl here, who dies. I feel it's unfortunate that Sir Karl here, he comes up and he's just, the slaves, they must be freed. And you get a journal entry, but you read the journal entry and it's not about Maya at all. And that's a couple of things happen in this game where you're dealing with that love story there. Yet he doesn't actually mention her when he's dying. I mean, it speaks for his, true knighthood that he's like, get the slaves. It definitely speaks for that. But it's unfortunate that that little love story there doesn't quite end in terms of him where you would have hoped it would. Here, what do you want to do? You can attack, you can flee, die, but you don't have to. You don't have to do it. It's role playing here, and I'm gonna shut up for a second as I read on screen. This was such a poignant moment that I did it live on the spot here, and I read a journal entry for you. And here you go, everybody. Listen to this moment here.
Sir Karl's last message to Maya. I realize now that I shouldn't allow our differences to interfere with our feelings. I suppose at my age it takes a while to adjust to new things. She's a dragon. She's literally, at least probably 100 years older than you. Remembering your beauty and bravery has helped me withstand the tortures they have subjected me to. I now go to gain my freedom. If I fall, then know I held you in my thoughts to the end. Or you could have just waited an hour and I would have saved you.
This will probably be an appropriate time to delve into the journal entries a little bit. I'll probably flash some more stuff from the manual that I don't have time to talk about individually as well. But let's start with journal entry number 4. The townspeople come out and thank you. After the last of the dragon armies are driven from the outposts, they have a large celebration with you as the guests of honor. The new commander speaks. Thank you for saving us. Your heroic actions will live forever. The people cheer you as you accept the key to the outpost. Now, not all of these are genuine entries. They're meant to discourage you from, reading them all, when you first get the game or something. But actually, some of them are sort of worth reading, after you've beaten the game and you've already checked everything. Some of them are kind of interesting, the way they're written. Number 2 here, which is not an actual journal entry. Listen, I know that you think that Sir Karl is the most honorable knight. However, I have found out that he is under the influence of an evil dragon named Maya. Maya is able to transform herself into the shape of a beautiful woman. We must forget about finding Karaman at this time. If we can get to the outpost in time, we might be able to save it.
But some of it actually is, like the dragon part of Maya is true, but she's not evil, and he was not under the influence of her either. But I love the way that is worded. It's just interesting to go back to it later on. Here is an accurate one about Sir Karl, Journal Entry 7. Listen, Sir Karl is the most honorable of men. I would follow him anywhere. But there's something very dark and strange going on around him. He seems obsessed with a young girl named Maya. The fact that he's about 40 years older than she is isn't really the problem if they just settle down and declare themselves. All that would happen is that a few gossips will snicker and that'll be the end of it. But they won't do that. Maya is extremely valuable to us. She has sources of information that are astounding, especially for one so young. But whenever the two of them are in the same room, the tension is so obvious that... Never mind. You say that he seems to be all right. I will go on that hope and let troubles find me in their own good time.
Okay,
Let's
finally
go.
got some loot.
Yes, some loot, finally. Yes, returning to the economy. It is awful. It's god-awful.
All the GoldBox games' economies are so awful. Now, this game, it takes a long time for you to get, all of your good stuff is found in scripted battles. All of the good stuff is in there. So, it takes a long time for you to get some of that good stuff in this game in particular. Again, the economy, it's just awful. You don't get that much money in this game, so they're trying to correct the economy in some way. They don't give you, like the Draconians don't give you that much money. Still, it won't take you that long at all for you to amass just an incredible amount of wealth that you'll start to just dump all of your money. Just forget the money that's left in battle. Just forget it. And that's very unrealistic. And again, the encumbrance issues in these games are just stupid. They should have altered them for a video game. I don't care how much gold I have on me. Don't make it so I can't move. I got so much gold in my pocket, I can't move a step. It's so stupid. It might be realistic that you can only hold so much, but what's not realistic? Dumping tons and tons of gold at a battle because you've got too much. And yeah, there's actually a bank in this game, so you could dump all your, money into the bank, but there's nothing to buy anyway, so it's just a useless economy, as all the GoldBox games are. Might Magic did it a million times better in terms of the economy. Time for some more reviews from Computer Gaming World. April 1990. Sneak peek at Loom, but up at the very top there, Blue Angels and Champions of Krynn. Even Breach 2 makes it. Oh, I gotta get to Breach 2 one of these days. Uh-oh. Oh no. Not her. Oh, Scorpia. Scorpia gets the crack at this one. This is actually an historic issue for Computer Gaming World because this is the first chance they gave her just to have at it. Just write as much as you want, Scorpia. Take control. And I don't believe it wouldn't take too long for them to, they'd still give her 3 pages worth of stuff, but then they'd start writing their own reviews as well. Not just relying on her to speak for the magazine. This new column format gives me a lot more freedom. I can review a game, or review and editorialize, or just editorialize, or discuss several games at once. In other words, I can do pretty much what I please with it. Unrestricted by the regular review article limitations.
So, over the coming months, you can expect to see almost anything here. What you can expect this time is a look at the latest release in SSI's AD&D series. Champions of Krynn is a game to boot up when you don't want to spend weeks or months on an epic adventure. It was designed to be a quick play, and emphasis definitely on combat. There are no puzzles to solve or complicated plots to follow. The action is fairly straightforward, although there are some complications of another kind, and she goes on to explain the changes in the gameplay mechanics, which perhaps I will get to later, but I don't spend much time talking about mechanics. You people aren't stupid. While the game is pretty standard fare overall, in spite of modifications, it does have a new feature not found in the others. Experience is occasionally given for non-combat activities. While these instances are few and far between, it's a nice change to be rewarded for doing something other than fighting. The second blot is the taking away of some items at the end of the scenario. You don't have any choice in the matter. It's done automatically. It is generally a mark of poor planning and of little regard for the player's satisfaction to take away hard-won items. Actually, Champions of Krynn is a pretty good game overall, but you do have to be aware of its failings as noted above. As long as you know what you're getting into and what to expect, you can have a good time with the game. Just be careful out there. Scorpia. Don't spend a single solitary second talking about the gold and, the economy, how awful it is, and all of that. Just don't spend a single second, but then let's just talk about how awful it is that I couldn't keep my DragonLance at the end of the adventure. Or my girdle of giant strength. I mean, these are her issues with that game. You will get those in the next game at some point. You shouldn't have them at the beginning of the game. You get to keep most of your good shit. That's enough. Okay? I have no issues whatsoever that they take away some of my items. I don't care. Do you know how much this woman praised the original Pool of Radiance because you could transfer characters to the next game? Just the fact that is allowed is a wonderful thing, and now you're getting down on what items they allow in the next game. Come on. You know that some people are starting the second game having not played the first game? We gotta, balance it out a little bit for them too, Scorpia, you know that? For a game that she claims that is great overall, there's not enough sentences devoted to what she thinks is great about it. Opinions. Where are the opinions about why it's great? Why is my overall feeling that you just want to sting this game where it hurts or something, Scorpia. We'll be seeing you again, I'm sure. Perhaps you think I'm being a little hard on Scorpia there. Why do I give her shit there? Why do I give her shit? History. History is why I give her shit. It's shit like that. You think, here is Computer Gaming World from 1996. When they did their very large issue about the 150 best games of all time and a whole bunch of other things. In it, they have the 15 least rewarding endings of all time. And, one of them is, from Scorpia. Number 2 is Justified. Number 2 there, Eye of the Beholder, definitely Justified. But if you don't think Scorpia's opinion in this 1990 issue seeped its way into the 1996 issue for number 9, Champions of Krynn, upon the completion of the quest, characters were rewarded by having their most powerful artifacts removed. This game does not deserve to be on this list. Your butthurt opinion about not being a god in the second game has no place in this issue. And none of the GoldBox games make it into their 150 best games of all time, by the way. Lots of other very wonderful RPGs of that era make it in there. They have something against GoldBox games, despite consistently calling them pretty damn good and great in some instances. This revolutionary combat system doesn't have a single one place in the 150 best games of all time list. Not even the first game, the revolutionary game, not even one. The only mention of a GoldBox game is so you can lambast it in your 15 worst endings of all time. This game has a wonderful ending, but that is ignored because you personally felt hurt because you didn't get to be a god in the second game. I'm pretty sure if I took a poll, I'm sure there would be people that would be angry about that, but not all of them. Not nearly enough to place it in that list. I'm pretty sure some of the Forgotten Realms games completely just erase all of your freaking items or whatever. I think you wake up in Curse of the Azure Bonds with no items, or Secret of the Silver Blades, one or the other, or both. Those games aren't mentioned, but this game, for some reason, even though the next game you will have most of your good items, this is the game that makes the list, huh? That is why, that hypocriticalness is why I gave her some shit there. Alright, we need to wipe some of that sin off here. Dragon Magazine, a magazine specializing in all kinds of role-playing games, including the pen and paper type. Issue number 156, American Magazine 350. Where's the date? Where's the damn date, Dragon? It's April of 1990. I looked ahead and found it. Now, this one did include a nice little advertisement for their Dragons of Flame side-scrolling venture there. Here is a very, very nice little feature they did about TSR and SSI here. One of the most finest examples of fantastic licensed games. And here is a little article about all of that. Too bad Computer Game World didn't do a 15 best licensed games, which I'm sure none of these would have made because they have something against these games. Despite being well reviewed, well liked, and well selling, I guess that's your Oscar mentality. You don't reward the movies and stuff that people go and watch or anything. SSI has turned out some very fine games. SSI Sword of Aragon has recently held my attention for far too many hours. I'm pretty sure Scorpia had some bad things to say about Sword of Aragon. This game was so good that I asked to have a similar game made into a very themed product to come out next year. Among the games licensed from TSR, Pool of Radiance is a work of art that has won several impressive awards for SSI. I've played it several different times on different computer formats, and I enjoyed it myself each time. SSI has recently released Champions of Krynn, a must-have game for computer players. It's fun, visually exciting, and captures the color and flavor of the DragonLance saga like nothing I have ever seen before. There's nothing like facing a horde of draconians and using the tender taunt against them to make a gamer feel good. That was such strong love. I don't even know if we need to read the review. Champions of Krynn is one of SSI's DragonLance role-playing epics, licensed from TSR Incorporated. It is worth purchasing immediately at your local software retailer. Being DragonLance saga enthusiasts, we found that this fantasy role-playing game brought new realism to the marvelous adventures we've been reading for the past few years. Karaman, Salamak Knights, Texas, the Dark Queen, they are all here in the best AD&D computer adventure to date. Spend a lot of time talking about mechanics, so I'm skipping one page to go to the end here. Remember that your adventuring party is basically good. Do not succumb to the temptations and do not kill without need. Remember the Knight's Oath. My honor is my life, and do buy this AD&D computer game, which is SSI's best yet. It got 5 out of 5 stars earlier. From Amiga Action, they didn't like the sound so much, but Steve here, I didn't like Heroes of the Lands much, but I found Champions of Krynn very enjoyable to play. The storyline is very good, and the missions are presented well. Champions of Krynn is a game worth getting. Graphics end up with a 77%, but their overall rating is 86%. Here's Doug. SSI's previous attempts at TSR Dungeons & Dragons RPG games haven't been bad, but I always felt they lacked something. However, Champions of Krynn seems to have learned from its previous mistakes and come up with a top-class RPG game. And here's Andy. From the moment I started playing, I found myself engrossed in a massive world filled to the brim with long and interesting missions. And surprisingly, the game doesn't get repetitive. A brilliant game, and one of the best in the RPG genre from a British magazine. More British stuff. Champions of Krynn. It's a really polished game. Overall, 91%. The game is pretty big, coming on 3 discs along with a 60-page adventurer's journal, 12-page instruction book, reference pamphlet, and poster. Value for money or what? Addictive. detailed, with a balanced combat magic system that can be recommended to combat aficionados. Krynn is SSI's best yet. I can't wait for the next. Paul Rigby. Champions of Krynn, to my mind, is the best in the series. Striking the line between playability and the original rules is difficult, but this time around it works fine. Even the manual is presented in the style of the TSR original, again helping to give the real D&D feel to the proceedings, a must for D&D enthusiasts as well as RPG fans, the best yet from SSI. Beautiful, detailed graphics and a large playing area enhance the atmosphere of the game. The game is complex, has great depths, is well thought out. If you want a game to tax your intellect, intuition, and memory simultaneously, this is it. An excellent game which has you living in its world rather than simply playing in it. I am genuinely surprised at how much the British magazines really like this one. I don't think it's the best of the series by any means. I thoroughly enjoy it. I thoroughly recommend it. It has its nice differences and challenges. Again, the moon system, I didn't talk about the moons yet, but there are 3 moons. One of them has no burden on you whatsoever, the dark moon or whatever. That's for enemies, and I'm not even sure if the game itself thinks about what the enemies have in terms of that moon, but there's the white moon and the red moon, and if you are a white mage, you get bonuses, and you get extra spells when the white moon is full, and when it's eclipsed, you don't get any spells there, and on the red moon's the same way. When it's full, you get extra red spells, and when it's not, I think you might even get less. It's a little bit of it's a little change there that is, it's interesting. I don't know, I could have gone with it. It didn't really matter to me that much, but it's an interesting change, I have to say. And the game itself has an extraordinarily nice story with it. I found the game to be easier in terms of the other games, but it's a great ride. It's a wonderful ride. Probably the best game to start the series with, and maybe that is why the British loved it so much, because it is easier from the American CRPG thinking. We are used to very difficult games, and that's where we get our enjoyment from, so it kind of makes sense that the British, in this easier game, kind of liked it a lot more, and I appreciate them saying those very kind words. There are other nice, interesting differences, including the Kender being able to yell, which was mentioned previously. He yells, and the enemies might concentrate their attacks on him. Their Thaco go down. All their Thacos will go down when he yells. It's very interesting to think of, Jikyuu here. He screams, and then everybody wants to attack him. Definitely check out all of my party members, by the way. They are all YouTubers. I will have them all linked in the description, including Amiga Bill, Intric 8, Jikyuu Gamer, Esper Dreams, and Stygian Phoenix. Definitely check them all out. And here is that fabulous, very nice end. I mean, it's not the best ending ever in a game, but it most certainly, with absolutely no doubt in my mind, it is not amongst the 15 worst endings of all time computer gaming world / Scorpia. Thank you again for your dedication. Judy, you must accept these medallions. You are now members of the special Solomonic Order of the Champions of Krynn. You will be honored in song and legend forever. Maya's held forward. She smiles. I want to thank you personally for your heroism. You have honored the memory of Sir Karl. You are truly heroes in the distance beyond the cheering crowd. There's a single glowing figure. A whisper comes on the wind. I am impressed. But you do not think this will help. Against me, we are setting up. Death Knights of Krynn. Lord South turns and leaves. The knights fly you out to an outpost. Everyone at the outpost gathers together and gives you 3 cheers. A proclamation is on the door. The good armies have been triumphant because of the acts of some great heroes. They will be remembered forever. Check out my review for Pool of Radiance, Eye of the Beholder, King's Bounty, and perhaps another one. I don't know what, though. Check some reviews out. I'll see you all later. Goodbye.